2 weeks into practice, what's the common theme that you're seeing out there that's a positive, and what are you feel like kind of a priority for you getting going a little bit more at this stage?
Yeah, I'd say probably the first thing that probably jumps out to me, it's been very competitive. There's been years in the past where the offense would dominate or the defense would dominate, and it really shouldn't be that way. You know, it should be in the competitive periods, it should come down to a point or two every single time. It's been pretty competitive. Today was the first day we did 3 down, odd spacing, what we call odd spacing, so odd front. And I thought the defense did a really good job from a blitz and pressure perspective. And it's obviously the first day offensively, you know, for run game rules and pass game. So, you know, I'd like for that to have been a little bit cleaner today, but overall I've been very impressed with the competitiveness. I think the young guys have adjusted pretty well for the most part, but it's starting to pile up on them right now a little bit. But that's probably the biggest things that jump out to me. I think, you know, some of the positions we came into the spring, you know, having some concerns about was at safety. That Garrett Taylor looks like a vet right now. You know, we talked about Garrett Taylor and Cam Brown. You see their maturity. You know, you see them understanding how to practice and championship habits, which we talk about all the time. I think Lamont Wade's had a really nice camp so far. He really has. So I think that's helped. I think at the defensive tackle position, Shelton has really grown. You see him taking a lot of the stuff that he's done in the weight room and really starting to transfer it to the field. And then I think, you know, the other guy's Culpepper. Culpepper's starting to show some flashes that looks like, you know, he may be able to factor in. That's obviously not mentioned in Windsor and P.J. Mustafer and some other guys. So that was a position, you know, that we had some question marks about, obviously. And then at receiver, we're young. We're talented, but we still got a lot of development, you know, to go at that position.
When you mention these players, who's standing out kind of that receiver, and how important is this spring for KJ? He's a young guy, but I'm assuming you have to look to him as kind of the leader of that group.
Yeah, in a lot of ways, and obviously, you know, he's got an outgoing personality and you know, fairly aggressive personality, so that's happening. He's very confident, so that helps as well. You know, I think Jahan Dotson, obviously, he's played a lot of football, and there's a lot of confidence that's come from that, but we need him to take another step. I think the Daniel Georges and Justin Shorters of the world, again, they got to play a little bit last year, but not enough. So really, their maturity from now until you know, camp is going to be really important with the quarterbacks, with film, with one-on-ones, with footwork, with strength, with all of it. Is going to be important. And then I think a guy that's kind of, you know, really had a nice spring so far is Chisinau. Chisinau can really run. As we know, we recruited him. You know, won the 100-meter in the state of Pennsylvania. The track team ended up recruiting him away from us. We lost him for a year or two, and then we were able to get him back. So he's had a really nice spring. He's big, he's strong, he's fast. And we're gonna need that.
When you see the spring, does technique jump out at you first, or just the size and the strength of the guys coming out of the weight room when you see them on the field? What kind of jumps out at you?
Yeah, I would say it's more guys that you really see that have taken steps. You see, you know, obviously the guys from year 1 to year 2, you see a big change in those. But I would also see it's really dramatic in the older guys. You know, guys like GT and guys like Cam Brown, that really have been around and played a lot of football and understand what it takes on and off the field, meetings, leadership, and it's probably magnified because we're young. You know, it's probably magnified with those guys standing out for us right now. But I think that's probably the biggest thing that jumps out. Obviously, you see some changes with some guys from what they did in the offseason, you know, in the weight room, but you know, I wouldn't say that's the thing that necessarily jumps out.
Have you changed your approach at all? Like, you know, best practices, taking things, or has your springs pretty much been the same as you've been here, how you've approached it?
They've been pretty much the same. We've you know, added some more situational stuff. You know, I don't think you can ever do enough of that, so we try to end each practice with some type of situation. Today was 4-minute. You know, try to do something like that every single day, whether it's 2-minute, whether it's 4-minute, whether it's backed up, whatever it may be, overtime, you know, those types of things, and talk about how we're going to handle it and all the things that factor into it. So I think that's always important, but it's obviously magnified, you know, when you're young and inexperienced.
James, how do you think Jared Parker has settled in, and how do you think the receivers, especially the young guys that you mentioned, how have they taken his coaching in the past couple of weeks?
Good. You know, he's aggressive. He is confident. You know, I'm not necessarily a believer that you have to play the position to necessarily coach it, but obviously there's value there. You know, he played in the SEC. He's coached a position, pretty much his entire career. And there's a lot of value that comes from that. He's been around good people in terms of staffs that he's been around. Obviously, with Coach Cutcliffe, I have a lot of respect for at Duke. And then obviously as a player and the guys he played for at Kentucky. So I think the transition's been really good. I think he fits really well with our staff. And obviously his relationship with Coach Sider helps with that transition as well. So I think good. I think the players are excited about what they're learning, and I think he's got an aggressive personality, which I like, and how he coaches the guys. And I think there's got a lot of confidence that's going to come from him.
James, you're talking about being young a lot so far this spring. When do you go about thinking about defining roles for guys? Is that something that happens in the spring, or is that something you see the spring and then over the summer you start thinking about that, where they might fit offensively or defensively?
Yeah, I think it's happening all the time. It's happening now in spring. It happens over summer. It happens obviously during camp. How you're looking at guys, how they're going to fit, what's their role going to be. And then obviously there's going to be a few guys that are going to surprise you. There's going to be some guys that make significant steps between now and camp after their meetings with their players and with their coaches and gotten really good feedback from myself and their position coaches on what they need to improve on. There's going to be a couple, of the freshmen show up that surprise us, that are more ready to play than maybe we anticipated. But yeah, I think all those things are going to be discussed and outlined and detailed, so that we give ourselves the best chance come to camp to have some experience and have some depth, and make sure that we're getting the talented guys some opportunities to get on the field.
Coach, what do you need to see to kind of make this spring a success? And by that too, I mean you need to see one or two positions be settled at the end of the spring. What does success mean in your eyes here?
Yeah, I think some of the stuff that I talked about in the opening spring press conference about some of the positions that we need to solidify, D tackle, safety, I think that would help us obviously going into the summer feeling like we got a better picture of what that's going to look like in the fall. I think obviously at the receiver position, having a better idea of how that's going to look in the fall. And then I think like us, like a lot of programs in the country, we're gonna maybe add a few guys between now and then from a transfer perspective. Wide receiver is something that we got our eyes open and looking around for, and possibly on the offensive line as well. So that's something that could change our picture here, between now and camp as well.
How do you define if a guy's been used enough or not enough in terms of you want to get him X number of snaps? How do you kind of figure out what that equation is?
You talking about during the spring or you talking about during the fall?
Or just in general? Probably more the fall than the spring.
Yeah, I think obviously you got to go into it based on what you've seen in camp and what you've seen in the practices, and then obviously in games, and who are your most productive players, who are your guys that can be game changers, that can significantly impact the game, and then you gotta look at a couple things. How many reps are they getting? Are they getting enough reps to give them a chance to impact the game? And I think every position is kind of different in how you're going to do that. And then I think the other thing I think is important on the offensive side of the ball is touches. How many touches does a Saquon Barkley get? How many touches does a Miles get? How many touches does KJ get? Those types of things. A lot of times you can have a really good football team and you got enough depth that doesn't really factor in. Sometimes when you got a young football team, while you're waiting for some guys to kind of take the next step, then you need to feed your playmakers and lean on them a little bit more than normal. But you hope that balances out as the year goes on. But yeah, I think there's a couple different ways you're going to do it. Obviously, you always want to make sure that your best players are on the field, but you better be developing those other guys as well to keep those guys healthy and also create some depth as the season goes on. And then that's the same thing with the playmakers. You better be charting to make sure those guys are getting enough touches. And it's not just on offense, it's also on special teams and all the different ways you can get the ball in their hands.
Hey James, you guys got a TV out there on one of the notes. What do you accomplish or hope to accomplish with that?
Yeah, it's a technology that a lot of people across the country are using. That they have purchased and have in their indoor facility permanently on the wall, and then a mobile one like that, so you can use it when you go inside or outside. There's a lot of different ways you can use it. So you can use it. Most people use it as a replay system. So literally that board is showing the previous play. So guys are able to kind of check that out and kind of get some idea as well as the coaches. And then obviously you can use it, say you've used that during the team period, and now you go to special teams. The quarterbacks could go over during that special teams period and go through the previous team period and make some of those corrections right away. But I think the biggest way is for replay. And then obviously there's a lot of different ways that it can be used. So it's a technology we've had at practice before to check out. And we're looking to possibly be able to get one in here that's permanent that we could use as well as the other teams. But then I think the mobile one, is useful as well.
James, at the start of spring, you said that the defense would emphasize generating turnovers. How do you think that's gone midway through spring practice now?
Pretty good. We track that every single day. So every single day we put up in the team meeting turnovers. Did the offense reach their goal, which is no turnovers per practice? Did the defense reach their goal, which is 3 turnovers or more per practice? Same with games. So we put that up every single day in our team meeting, and then we do the same thing with explosive plays. Did the offense meet their goal of explosive plays, and the defense meet their goal? Because those two things are going to have a huge factor. I think it's been about what it's been in the past, not this practice, but last practice. The defense was able to get their hands on a lot of balls and create some turnovers through fumbles, as well as interceptions. So that was a positive. But I think it's probably about where it's been because we always emphasize it. I think the one thing we're probably emphasizing a little bit more defensively is stripping the ball out more in practice, which is good for both sides, which is good for our offense for ball security. It's good for our defense, obviously, to make sure they're going after the ball. You don't have a chance to get the ball unless you go after it.
James, how long did it take John Reed to get back to his pre-injury form, and how did that injury manifest itself when he was first coming back?
Yeah, I think we've talked about this before. I mean, obviously you have the physical aspect that the doctors are going to decide, when they're able to come back from, and the players got a part in that as well too. But then I think you also have the aspect of the confidence, of going out and playing, and both those things take time to work through. It's the physical aspect and it's the mental aspect of it. That they can come out here and change direction and fly around and stick their foot in the ground and be physical in the run game and contest balls, in close quarters and things like that. That takes time. In terms of giving you an exact timeline of when that happened, I probably would have been able to answer that probably better during the season, but to look back now and tell you exactly when that happened, I'm not sure, but I know he's in a great place right now.